Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome back to Unmasking Dad channel. My name is Wade, and today I wanted to discuss shadow values and values. I want to go deeper into those concepts as I broached them last week in my video. And I really wanted to focus in on how values, and in particular shadow values, affect you and me and our behaviors, and how they can point to dissatisfaction with our lives or problems that we may have or encounter along the way. So as I've been doing my coaching training, this values and values gaps that we have in our lives has become pretty apparent, and has been highlighted to me actually that it's very, very important to understand as we utilize these values to help make changes and to get the results that we want. And in fact, it's so important, it's one of the earliest things we do in the coaching process with you. So first, it's probably important to get a bit of a definition or a difference between standard values and shadow values. So standard values, or what I would call or term more culturally acceptable or socially acceptable values, are the more shiny values, I like to call them. So things like I value honesty, I value integrity, I value giving, I value, those sorts of traits that are perceived as positive. Now, shadow values, on the other hand, are probably the darker brother, darker sibling, or twin. Actually, it's probably a better way of putting it, the darker twin of the golden values. And they're more what people would think are a bit naughty, not so socially acceptable. So you might look at things like control, admiration. What else would be in the anything that's darker: admiration, control, influence, things like that, that people don't admittedly say out loud, but it's something that they might want from within. In fact, you may not even realize it, but you may have these shadow values that are underlying that you're not actually aware of. But what tends to happen is you'll get triggered by certain situations that aren't meeting that value. So it's important to sort of unwind that, figure out what you're getting triggered by and why that might be, to identify what value is not getting the attention that it requires. So if we look at this in terms of, you're a 40-year-old male, a father, you've built up your life on your values, what you perceive are good values. You've built your life on integrity, honesty, trust, and you've built a great family home, you've got a great career, you've got an awesome family, but you're just missing something. Something's not right, and there's certain situations that you just knock your confidence a bit, or give you that feeling of disease and just dissatisfaction in what you're doing. You're not feeling whole, or you're not feeling like your authentic self. Now, a lot of the time that comes down to those other values are great, and that's what you have as your integrity, but you're missing your shadow values because you're not acknowledging them or allowing them to help move you along. So essentially you're denying your shadow values, so you're losing a piece of you that is critical because it is part of your value system. So it's understanding those shadow values and how you can incorporate them into your life to become whole, become authentic, and become the true authentic you. Now, it's quite interesting because I noticed this shadow values and values gap has quite an effect on everyone, but I do notice it in men in particular, and fathers, at that age of 40 and above. Now, I'm not 100% sure why, but I do know there's a lot of stigma on turning 40. People call it, midlife crisis for men, hitting the 40, going out and buying motorbikes and doing all this crazy stuff because you hit 40 because you've just realised that you're at another stage of life. But it just seems to have a big impact, and I realised that too. For me, it was into my later, 45s, 46s when I derailed quite a lot, and I didn't know why. It led me on the path of self-awareness and discovery. So that's why I aim to help, this age bracket, fathers in 40s and above. But what we also tend to find at that time, you've had, years and years of living your values and living and building to what you think you need to be showing. You might be that mask that I discussed. You might have that mask on of your shadow, of your values, and you're hiding your shadow values. So it's about unmasking yourself and pulling those shadow values in to your normal values and making yourself whole. And it's critical to helping you see where you are and where your gaps are and why you might not be satisfied and why you might feel lost in your life at the moment. So understanding shadow values versus values is the first important step. But the way to do that, probably the easiest way, is just, again, go back to those triggers, go back to those things that trigger you emotionally, and it's a disproportionate emotion or outburst or reaction that you might have to something that just seems, whoa, that's a bit strange. That didn't really warrant that level of trigger in me. And I want you to look at that trigger and that situation at that point, and then look at what is the feeling and behind there that's lacking or you're not getting. And it's important to do that with a sense of curiosity and non-judgment, because you really just want to discover what's going on and why these things might be happening to you with these triggers and the values the underlying values that may not be getting met. And if you do that with curiosity, it just makes it easier on yourself. And then as you build up that awareness, you might start to understand that a little bit about what is the ultimate feeling you're trying to get, or the value that you were trying to get. And then it's working out ways to incorporate that value into your life in a way that's still holds true to your integrity, but it gives you those values that you require. And that's what we do in the coaching. We work on finding those values, from your good golden values right through to your shadow values, meeting them up and also using them to help you get your results, because all your values hold energy for you. They help drive you. So that's what we find when we do a values track and a values gap analysis. We might find your values are often in one direction, but what you're doing on a daily basis is completely different. And that gap might be the cause of your dissatisfaction, your problems. It can lead into depression as well. So it's a very significant thing and really important to get an understanding of and work with to improve yourself. But grabbing that energy also helps us move you towards your results faster, because that energy helps drive you to your actions and those actions that are required to get the results that you want. So it's just an intertwining of the two. Your golden values versus your shadow values, linking them to your goals and results to help create momentum and energy. So values, shadow values, very important to learn, very important to understand. And again, that's why we focus in on them pretty early on in any coaching that I do with people. And then we start from there, and then we work our way into linking them and getting the results that you want. So as an example, one I talked about last week from my perspective, I have a shadow value of control because I lacked it as a child. I was not allowed to have any control. And it was that time when I asked my daughter to do something, she said no. I had a loss of control, what I perceived as a loss of control. It triggered me straight away into reacting and having an outburst that wasn't constructive. and it took removing myself from the situation and having my partner point out that my reaction was overcooked and unreasonable for what the request was that I made. And that allowed me to reflect very quickly on why I reacted the way I did. And I realised it was that shadow value of control was diminished, and it created that trigger. I didn't handle that trigger at the time appropriately. I didn't find a way to minimise it before I reacted. And having that reflection time meant I could come back, sit down with my daughter, apologise and discuss it calmly. So it removed that trigger and that situation, and that just the lack of decent communication and forming a bad relationship with my daughter, which is what happens when I react like that to her. It's non-conducive to helping any of us. So that was an example of hitting my shadow value, that shadow value getting diminished. I got triggered, I reacted badly, but I came back round and I worked it out, what was going on, and I remedied the situation. So it's having that awareness is key, as I said. So it was understanding that and the relationship between them, triggers and shadow values, that helped me, and that's what I hope to help you with. So thank you very much for joining me today. It's just a quick video on shadow values and values. I hope you got something out of it, and I'll see you again on my next video. Thank you.